No one closes this aircraft. The captain's voice cut through the first-class cabin just as Lily Brooks placed her small boarding pass into Eleanor Whitmore's trembling hand. Ethan Brooks froze beside his daughter, one hand still resting protectively on her shoulder, while Daniel Mercer stepped forward with a polished smile and said, "Captain, this has already been handled." But Lily looked up at her father, confused and soft-eyed, and whispered, "Daddy, did I do something wrong?" 3 hours earlier, the morning had started with the smell of diesel on Ethan's jacket and strawberry lip balm on Lily's scarf. He had picked her up from school the day before, driven through 2 extra delivery routes, and packed their small suitcase after midnight under the yellow kitchen light. Lily was 8, and this was her first real flight, the kind she had circled on the calendar with a purple marker and tiny stars around the date. Ethan wore his faded navy delivery jacket because it was the warmest thing he owned. The cuffs rubbed pale from years of steering wheels, cardboard boxes, rain, and quiet sacrifice. At the airport, everything seemed too bright. The polished floors reflected the overhead signs. Wheels clicked.
Phones rang.
A coffee machine hissed somewhere near gate B17, and Lily walked close enough to Ethan that her mitten brushed his hand every few steps. She held the boarding pass like it was a golden ticket. Seat 4A. Window. First cabin. Not because Ethan had money, but because a delayed voucher from a year earlier had finally turned into one small miracle for his daughter. "Can I see the clouds before everyone else?" she asked. Ethan smiled and tapped the edge of the paper. "You earned that window, kiddo." Then, near the gate desk, the rhythm changed. A printer spat out a new slip. A red priority sticker was pressed over Lily's seat number with a little too much force. Daniel Mercer, Regional Seat Operations Manager, stood behind the counter in a tailored gray suit, speaking with the calm voice of a man who knew how to make unfairness sound official. "We've had a cabin adjustment," he said. "Your daughter's seat has been reassigned." Ethan looked at the paper, then at Lily. "We paid to sit together." Daniel's smile did not move. "You'll still be transported safely, Mr. Brooks. That's the service purchased." A woman in pearls glanced at Ethan's scuffed work boots. Someone behind him muttered, "Always an issue with these discount upgrades." Ethan heard it. Lily heard it too. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the boarding pass until the paper bent. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not shame the woman. He only crouched beside Lily and smoothed the crease with his thumb. "Look at me," he said gently. "We don't let other people decide how small we are." That was when Eleanor Whitmore shifted in the boarding line, one hand on a worn wooden cane, the other pressed quietly against her knee. She was trying not to show pain, but Lily noticed. Children often saw what adults politely ignored. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "She hurts." Ethan turned. Eleanor gave him a faint apologetic smile, as if being old and tired had somehow inconvenienced the room. Daniel was already waving another passenger forward, trying to keep the line moving, trying to make the moment disappear. Ethan looked back at Lily's bent boarding pass, then at the elderly woman's trembling hand around the cane. He took one slow breath. "Sweetheart," he asked, "would you like Grandma to have your seat?" Lily stared at the window number 1 last time. Then she walked to Eleanor and held out the pass with both hands. Eleanor accepted it, and for a second, the busy gate seemed to lose its sound. But the small cold thing Ethan did not yet see was the alert blinking on the gate screen beside Daniel's elbow. "Seat change not synchronized." The word "seat change not synchronized" blinked once, twice, then disappeared behind Daniel Mercer's hand as he leaned over the counter and tapped the screen dark. Ethan noticed the motion, not the message, because Lily was still standing in front of Eleanor with her little arms extended, offering away the one thing she had been talking about all week. Daniel cleared his throat. "That will not be necessary." Ethan looked up. "She wants to help." "Sir, please don't complicate boarding." The gate lights hummed. Above them, cold and white, flattening every face into airport fatigue. Somewhere behind the counter, the printer kept breathing out paper in short mechanical bursts, each sheet landing with a soft slap like another decision already made. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from a kiosk across the concourse, mixing with the rubber scent of suitcase wheels and the faint sharpness of cleaning spray on the floor. Lily lowered the boarding pass a little, unsure whether she had done something kind or something forbidden. Eleanor did not take it yet. She looked from Lily to Ethan, then to Daniel, her pale eyes stopping for one quiet second on the red priority sticker pressed over the original seat number. "It's all right," Ethan told his daughter. "Let the grown-ups breathe for a second." Daniel's smile returned, smooth as glass. "Mr. Brooks, your cooperation is appreciated. However, passenger seat assignments are under operational control until the aircraft door closes." "I understand." "Then please step aside. My daughter asked a question." That was all Ethan said, but it landed harder than a complaint. A few people in line shifted their weight. A man in a sport coat checked his watch with theatrical impatience. The woman in pearls gave Lily a look that was not cruel enough to be remembered, only careless enough to hurt. "Honey," the woman said, not bending down. "Sometimes adults have to make decisions you don't understand." Lily looked at Ethan, cheeks pink. Ethan's jaw tightened, then softened. He reached for her mitten, not to pull her back, but to remind her she was not alone. Daniel picked up the newly printed slip and held it between two fingers as if it were final law. "You and your daughter have been accommodated in row 31, seats B and C. Together, safe, transported. That is the guarantee." "She had for Ethan said quietly, "a window seat." "A seat assignment," Daniel corrected. "Not a promise." The sentence opened a small hollow in the air. Ethan glanced down at Lily's purple backpack, the little cloud patch stitched crookedly onto the front because he had sewn it himself after a delivery shift. She had packed crayons, a granola bar, and a drawing of the sky she wanted to see. None of that mattered to the policy Daniel was wearing like a clean shirt. From the end of the line, Eleanor shifted again, her cane tapping once against the polished tile. The sound was small, but it seemed to separate itself from the noise of the terminal.
Top.
Then silence. She was still watching Daniel's hand, the one that had covered the screen too quickly. "Mr. Brooks," Daniel continued, lowering his voice into something that sounded almost kind, "I'm trying to prevent embarrassment. These situations happen when passengers misunderstand upgrade inventory." "I didn't misunderstand. You're a delivery driver, correct?" Ethan went still. Daniel's tone stayed gentle, professional, almost sympathetic. "That made it worse." "I only mean," Daniel added, "airline fare classes can be confusing if you don't travel often." Someone behind Ethan exhaled a laugh through the nose. Not loud, not enough to accuse, just enough for Lily to hear. Ethan did not turn around. He did not tell Daniel about the overtime routes, the saved vouchers, the months of saying no to little things so he could say yes to this one. He only took the wrinkled slip from the counter and folded it once, carefully, so Lily would not see his hand shake. "My job doesn't make me confused," he said. "It makes me tired." For the first time, Daniel's eyes flickered. Eleanor's fingers closed more firmly around the top of her cane. The old logo carved into the wood caught the terminal light, a faded wing inside a circle, worn smooth by decades of touch. The gate agent beside Daniel glanced at it, frowned as if a memory had brushed past her, then quickly looked away when Daniel slid the red stickered paper under another stack of documents. "Boarding must continue," he said. "First cabin passengers next." "But that's mine," Lily whispered, pointing at the pass still in her hands. Ethan crouched before anyone else could answer. His knees cracked softly against the tile. "Listen to me, Lil. A seat can be changed. Your heart doesn't have to be." Lily nodded, but her eyes had gone shiny. Ethan stood, moved them out of the center of the line, and gave Eleanor a small path forward even, though no one had offered him one. Eleanor stepped past slowly, close enough that Ethan could see her hand tremble from pain or age or something deeper. As she passed, her gaze dropped to the folded reassignment slip in Ethan's hand, then to the boarding pass Lily still held, then back to the counter where Daniel's screen had gone dark too fast. And just before the scanner beeped for the next passenger, Daniel leaned toward the gate agent and murmured, Remove the child's original seat from the visible manifest. Remove the child's original seat from the visible manifest. Daniel Mercer said it softly enough that most people would have missed it, but Ethan Brooks had spent years listening for small things under louder ones. The rattle in a van engine before the belt snapped, the nervous breath of his daughter before she admitted she was scared, the silence that came right before someone decided a working man did not deserve an explanation. He did not confront Daniel. He did not accuse him. He simply looked down at Lily, saw the boarding pass still pinched between her fingers, and made a choice. Eleanor had taken 3 careful steps toward the jet bridge when her cane slipped on a faint streak of melted snow tracked in from the terminal doors. It was not dramatic. No one screamed. Her shoulder dipped, her breath caught, and the little leather bag on her wrist swung forward. Ethan moved before anyone else did. One hand caught the cane, the other steadied her elbow, firm enough to help but gentle enough not to embarrass her. "Easy," he said. "I've got you." Eleanor's eyes lifted to his. Up close, she looked smaller than she had from the line, wrapped in a charcoal coat with a frayed cuff, her silver hair tucked beneath a plain wool hat. Her face carried the kind of tiredness that did not come from one morning at an airport. It came from years of watching something you loved become harder to recognize. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel looked over and sighed as if kindness had become another delay. "Sir, we do have staff for passenger assistance." Ethan glanced at the cane in his hand. The old wood was polished smooth where a palm had held it for a very long time, but near the handle, a thin line of grime had settled inside the carved wing logo. Without thinking, Ethan rubbed it gently with his thumb, clearing the dust from the faded circle. "She was closer to me," he said. "That was all." Lily stepped beside Eleanor and held up the boarding pass again, both hands this time, as if giving away something sacred required ceremony. "You can have the window," she said. "If your knee hurts, you shouldn't walk all the way back." Eleanor looked at the pass but did not take it right away. "That was your seat, sweetheart." Lily nodded with the solemn courage only children can have when they are trying not to be sad. "Daddy says seats can change. Hearts don't have to." The words passed through the gate area quietly, but they did not vanish. The gate agent's fingers paused above the keyboard. A man who had been complaining about the delay stopped mid-breath. Even Daniel's polished smile thinned for half a second. Ethan crouched beside Lily. "You sure?" he asked. He gave her a way out because real kindness was never something a child should be forced to perform for adults. Lily looked toward the airplane door, toward the life she had imagined from seat 4A, toward the clouds she had drawn in purple marker. Then she nodded. Ethan swallowed once, hiding the ache before it reached his face. He thought about the rent envelope still short by $76 on top of the refrigerator. He thought about the extra Saturday route he had taken, the cold fries he had eaten in the van because taking Lily out for dinner would have cost too much. He thought about his late wife, Rachel, who used to say that poverty could take comfort, but it did not get to take character unless you handed it over. So he placed his rough hand lightly over Lily's small one and guided the boarding pass into Eleanor's palm. "Thank you for letting her help," Ethan said. "Not thank you for accepting. Not sorry we're in the way. Thank you for letting her help." It changed the shape of the moment. Eleanor closed her fingers around the pass, and something in her face shifted. Not recognition, not trust yet, but attention. She tucked the boarding pass carefully into the inside pocket of her coat instead of handing it to Daniel. Daniel noticed. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'll need that scanned properly at the door." "In a moment," Eleanor said. Her voice was quiet, but for the first time it did not sound fragile. Ethan bent to pick up her small leather bag from the floor, where it had fallen open just enough to reveal a folded handkerchief, a pill bottle, and a small brass luggage tag worn almost blank from age. He did not look inside. He simply closed it and returned it to her with both hands, preserving her privacy the way he wished someone had preserved his daughter's dignity. "You dropped this." "Most people look," Eleanor said. "Most people are busy," Ethan replied. Daniel gave a soft laugh. "Well, Mr. Brooks, if everyone is done with the sentimental moment, we do have an on-time departure to protect." Ethan nodded, But before stepping aside, he noticed the red priority sticker peeling slightly from the corner of Lily's reassignment slip on the counter. Beneath it, just for a breath, the original seat number showed through in pale ink. For A. He did not say anything. He only folded the slip into his jacket pocket, the way a man keeps a receipt when something about the bill does not feel right. Eleanor saw him do it, saw the care, saw the restraint, and her fingers tightened around Lily's boarding pass as if that small rectangle of paper had suddenly become more than a seat. The moment Eleanor tucked Lily's boarding pass into her coat instead of surrendering it, Daniel Mercer's careful calm began to harden around the edges. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Men like Daniel understood that a soft tone could move people faster than a shove if it carried the weight of policy behind it. "Mr. Brooks," he said, stepping between Ethan and the scanner. "For security reasons, passengers may not exchange boarding documents among themselves." Ethan looked at him, then at Lily, then at Eleanor's hand pressed over the pocket where the pass now rested. "She didn't exchange it," he said. "She gave up a seat. That is not how the system sees it. Systems don't have knees." For one small second, the gate went still. Not silent, not yet, but slower, as if even the rolling suitcases had lost rhythm. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the agent beside him. "Document the passenger interference." The word interference landed on Ethan's chest with familiar weight. Not father, not customer, not man trying to help. Interference. Lily stepped closer to him, her purple backpack bumping his leg. "Daddy wasn't interfering," she said softly. "He helped when her stick slipped." "It's okay, Lil," Ethan murmured, placing one hand gently on the top of her backpack. "We don't have to win every sentence." Eleanor heard that. Her eyes lifted, and something unreadable moved behind them. She still did not reveal who she was. She still did not defend him. She simply watched the way Ethan absorbed insult without handing it to his daughter. Daniel reached toward the counter for the folded reassignment slip Ethan had quietly placed near his jacket pocket. "I'll take that updated document." Ethan's hand covered it before Daniel could. Not aggressively, just firmly, 2 fingers on paper, his palm calloused and marked by a thin line of grease that airport soap had not removed. "This one has my daughter's name on it," Ethan said. "Then you understand why it belongs with the airline record. I understand it was handed to us after her seat changed." The gate agent, a young woman named Marcy with tired eyes and a silver badge tilted slightly crooked on her blazer, glanced down at her screen. The red notification had returned, blinking under the passenger list like a weak heartbeat. "Sync error. Original seat field active." Marcy frowned. "Daniel," she whispered. "It's still showing 4A in the original field." Daniel did not look at the screen. "Refresh it." "I did." "Then override." Eleanor's cane tapped once. A quiet sound. A wooden sound. The kind of sound that belonged in an older office, an older boardroom, an older promise. "Does the airline still keep the first scan timestamp?" she asked. Daniel turned toward her with practiced patience. "Ma'am, that's an internal operations detail." "So it does." His smile tightened. "What I mean is, passengers don't need to concern themselves with technical matters." "I wasn't concerned," Eleanor said. "I was asking whether it still exists." Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her. Not because he knew anything. Not because she seemed wealthy or important. She did not. Her coat was plain. Her shoes were sensible. Her hand trembled slightly over the cane. But the question she had asked did not sound like curiosity. It sounded like memory. Daniel shifted half a step to the side, placing his body between Eleanor and the screen. It was a small movement, almost polite, but Ethan noticed it the way he noticed bad weather before rain. He had spent years delivering packages to buildings where cameras watched every hallway and people lied best when they stood just a little too close to the evidence. "Can I ask one thing?" Ethan said. Daniel exhaled. Briefly. Ethan unfolded the reassignment slip and held it under the white gate light. The red priority sticker had lifted at one corner, and beneath it the original print showed through faintly, not erased, just hidden. "Seat 4A. Lily Brooks." If this was a normal reassignment, Ethan asked, why is her original seat still under the sticker? Marcy stopped typing. The scanner beeped for no one. Lily leaned in, squinting with the honest seriousness of a child reading a school worksheet. That was already there, she said, before he put the red thing on it. Daniel turned too quickly. Children often misunderstand sequence. Ethan folded the paper back once. Slower now. She understands stickers. A few passengers heard that and looked over. Daniel gave a short, controlled laugh. Mr. Brooks, with respect, adhesive labels are not evidence of misconduct. We use them all day. Then check the timestamp, Eleanor said. Her voice remained low, but this time Marcy looked at her, not Daniel. Daniel's expression did not break, but one detail slipped. The 9:42 change was approved, he said. Marcy blinked. I didn't say the time out loud. The air around the gate seemed to thin. Ethan felt Lily's hand search for his and close around two of his fingers. Eleanor's gaze moved from Daniel's face to the screen behind him, where the sync error continued blinking in small red letters, patient and accusing. And for the first time, the problem no longer looked like a seat change. It looked like a clock someone had tried to bury before anyone heard it ticking. The time Daniel should not have known sat between them like a dropped match. The 9:42 change was approved, he had said, and now Marcy's hand hovered above the keyboard without touching a single key. The scanner light blinked green, then red, then green again, waiting for someone to decide which version of the truth it was supposed to accept. Ethan felt Lily's fingers tighten around his. He looked down, saw the worry in her face, and lowered his voice until it belonged only to her. You're safe, he said. Nothing about this is your fault. Daniel recovered first. Men who lived behind procedure often knew how to put their mask back on quickly. He gave Marcy a small, disappointed smile, as if the problem were her nerves and not his mouth. Let's not create confusion over routine operations language, he said. Timestamps are visible on my supervisor dashboard. I reviewed the seat map earlier. That's all. Then show the dashboard, Ethan said. The sentence was plain. No anger. No challenge in his posture. Just a working man asking for the same light everyone else had been using to judge him. A few passengers turned fully now. A suitcase will stop squeaking. Somewhere down the concourse, a boarding announcement for another flight faded into static, and in the gap afterward, the air conditioning seemed suddenly loud. Daniel's smile thinned again. Mr. Brooks, I understand you're frustrated, but operational dashboards are not displayed to passengers. I'm not asking to see every passenger, Ethan said. He unfolded the reassignment slip and laid it carefully on the counter beneath the white gate lamp. Just my daughter's seat, the one with her name under the sticker. Lily leaned against his leg, breathing through her nose the way she did when trying not to cry in front of strangers. Ethan set his hand gently over her backpack strap, a small shield made of touch. He did not wave the paper. He did not accuse. He simply let the light do what shouting could not. Under the peeling red priority sticker, the faint, original print remained clear enough for anyone close to see. Brooks, Lily. Seat 4A. Marcy swallowed. That's not supposed to print through. Daniel turned to her. Marcy. It was only her name, but it carried a warning. Eleanor heard it. Her pale eyes moved from the slip to Marcy's face, and something in her expression softened with recognition, not of the woman, but of fear wearing a uniform. Then Eleanor reached into her coat and placed Lily's original boarding pass on the counter beside the reassignment slip. She did it slowly, almost tenderly, as if returning a fragile bird to a branch. Compare the barcode, she said. Marcy hesitated. Daniel's hand lifted, palm open. Ma'am, that won't be necessary. We can resolve this privately after boarding. Private is where small wrongs learn to grow, Eleanor said. No one spoke for a beat. Ethan looked at the elderly woman, surprised by the steel beneath her quiet. Still, he did not know who she was. To him, she was only someone tired, someone sore, someone who had been nearly brushed aside. Daniel adjusted his tie. With respect, ma'am, This is exactly how misinformation spreads. A passenger gives away a seat, another passenger misunderstands a sticker, and suddenly people think there's misconduct. Ethan lifted his eyes. My daughter didn't misunderstand giving. The words landed gently, but the crowd felt them. Marcy looked at Lily, then down at the two documents. She picked up the handheld scanner with a small click. Daniel stepped closer. Marcy, I'll handle it. I just need to clear the sync error, she whispered. Now. That's not your call. Eleanor's cane tapped once against the tile. Marcy scanned the boarding pass before fear could talk her out of it. The device chirped, then flashed amber instead of green. On the screen, two records appeared. Original assignment 4A, Lily Brooks. Current visible assignment 31B, Lily Brooks. Between them sat a third line, half collapsed beneath an admin code. Priority hold. Manager override. The gate seemed to inhale and not release. The man in the sport coat stopped checking his watch. The woman in pearls looked away first. Daniel gave a quiet laugh, too quick to be natural. That proves nothing except that the system retained an old field. It proves she had the seat, Marcy said before she could stop herself. Daniel's eyes sharpened. It proves the system retained an old field, he repeated, slower. Ethan saw Marcy shrink by half an inch. He knew that kind of pressure. He had seen dispatch supervisors blame drivers for routes they changed themselves. Customers blame delivery men for broken things packed badly at warehouses. People with clean hands explain why dirty hands must have done it. So Ethan reached for the papers, stacked them neatly, and slid them closer to Marcy, not Daniel. No one has to get hurt telling the truth, he said. Lily's breathing eased against his side. Eleanor looked at Ethan then with a new attention, as if kindness had just become evidence of something deeper than manners. She did not reveal herself. Instead, she turned slightly away and pressed two fingers to a small button on the side of her cane. Not a panic alarm, not a dramatic device, just an old-fashioned recorder built into the handle for personal notes. A tiny red light blinked once beneath her thumb. Please, she said to Marcy. Do not delete anything. Daniel's face remained composed, but a pulse appeared at the corner of his jaw. There's nothing to delete. Marcy looked back at the monitor, and this time her voice was barely above a breath. Then why is the manager override linked to a passenger who hasn't checked in yet? The time Daniel should not have known sat between them like a dropped match. The 942 change was approved, he had said, and now Marcy's hand hovered above the keyboard without touching a single key. The scanner light blinked green, then red, then green again, waiting for someone to decide which version of the truth it was supposed to accept. Ethan felt Lily's fingers tighten around his. He looked down, saw the worry in her face, and lowered his voice until it belonged only to her. You're safe, he said. Nothing about this is your fault. Daniel recovered first. Men who lived behind procedure often knew how to put their mask back on quickly. He gave Marcy a small, disappointed smile, as if the problem were her nerves and not his mouth. Let's not create confusion over routine operations language, he said. Timestamps are visible on my supervisor dashboard. I reviewed the seat map earlier. That's all. Then show the dashboard, Ethan said. The sentence was plain. No anger. No challenge in his posture. Just a working man asking for the same light everyone else had been using to judge him. A few passengers turned fully now. A suitcase will stop squeaking. Somewhere down the concourse, a boarding announcement for another flight faded into static, and in the gap afterward, the air conditioning seemed suddenly loud. Daniel's smile thinned again. Mr. Brooks, I understand you're frustrated, but operational dashboards are not displayed to passengers. I'm not asking to see every passenger, Ethan said. He unfolded the reassignment slip and laid it carefully on the counter beneath the white gate lamp. Just my daughter's seat. The one with her name under the sticker. Lily leaned against his leg, breathing through her nose the way she did when trying not to cry in front of strangers. Ethan set his hand gently over her backpack strap, a small shield made of touch. He did not wave the paper. He did not accuse. He simply let the light do what shouting could not. Under the peeling red priority sticker, the faint original print remained clear enough for anyone close to see. Brooks, Lily. Seat 4A. Marcy swallowed. That's not supposed to print through. Daniel turned to her. Marcy. It was only her name, but it carried a warning. Eleanor heard it. Her pale eyes moved from the slip to Marcy's face, and something in her expression softened with recognition, not of the woman, but of fear wearing a uniform. Then Eleanor reached into her coat and placed Lily's original boarding pass on the counter beside the reassignment slip. She did it slowly, almost tenderly, as if returning a fragile bird to a branch. Compare the barcode, she said. Marcy hesitated. Daniel's hand lifted, palm open. Ma'am, that won't be necessary. We can resolve this privately after boarding. Private is where small wrongs learn to grow, Eleanor said. No one spoke for a beat. Ethan looked at the elderly woman, surprised by the steel beneath her quiet. Still, he did not know who she was. To him, she was only someone tired, someone sore, someone who had been nearly brushed aside. Daniel adjusted his tie. With respect, ma'am, this is exactly how misinformation spreads. A passenger gives away a seat, another passenger misunderstands a sticker, and suddenly people think there's misconduct. Ethan lifted his eyes. My daughter didn't misunderstand giving. The words landed gently, but the crowd felt them. Marcy looked at Lily, then down at the two documents. She picked up the handheld scanner with a small click. Daniel stepped closer. Marcy, I'll handle it. I just need to clear the sync error, she whispered. Now. That's not your call. Eleanor's cane tapped once against the tile. Marcy scanned the boarding pass before fear could talk her out of it. The device chirped, then flashed amber instead of green. On the screen, two records appeared. Original assignment 4A, Lily Brooks. Current visible assignment 31B, Lily Brooks. Between them sat a third line, half collapsed beneath an admin code. Priority hold. Manager override. The gate seemed to inhale and not release. The man in the sport coat stopped checking his watch. The woman in pearls looked away first. Daniel gave a quiet laugh, too quick to be natural. That proves nothing except that the system retained an old field. It proves she had the seat, Marcy said before she could stop herself. Daniel's eyes sharpened. It proves the system retained an old field, he repeated, slower. Ethan saw Marcy shrink by half an inch. He knew that kind of pressure. He had seen dispatch supervisors blame drivers for routes they changed themselves. Customers blame delivery men for broken things packed badly at warehouses. People with clean hands explain why dirty hands must have done it. So Ethan reached for the papers, stacked them neatly, and slid them closer to Marcy, not Daniel. No one has to get hurt telling the truth, he said. Lily's breathing eased against his side. Eleanor looked at Ethan then with a new attention, as if kindness had just become evidence of something deeper than manners. She did not reveal herself. Instead, she turned slightly away and pressed two fingers to a small button on the side of her cane. Not a panic alarm, not a dramatic device, just an old-fashioned recorder built into the handle for personal notes. A tiny red light blinked once beneath her thumb. Please, she said to Marcy. Do not delete anything. Daniel's face remained composed, but a pulse appeared at the corner of his jaw. There's nothing to delete. Marcy looked back at the monitor, and this time her voice was barely above a breath. Then why is the manager override linked to a passenger who hasn't checked in yet? Manager override confirmed, Marcy whispered, and the small screen at the aircraft door showed what Daniel Mercer could no longer polish into policy. Lily Brooks, original seat 4A, changed through 3 hidden steps, then held under a VIP profile that had never checked in. The flight manifest, the seat log, and the scanner record all lined up beneath the same timestamp. Daniel had spoken before anyone else could see it. For a long second, nobody moved. Even the jet bridge seemed to hold its breath. Captain Robert Hayes stood beside the open cockpit door with his cap tucked beneath one arm, his face calm but grave. This aircraft will not depart under a corrupted manifest, he said. Daniel's mouth opened, but no sentence came out. His hand went to his tie, then dropped to his side. Eleanor Whitmore stepped forward from 4A, Lily's boarding pass still protected between her fingers. She looked older now under the cabin lights, but not weaker. The tremor in her hand was real. So was the authority in her voice. "Captain Hayes," she said, "please read the final line." The captain looked down at Marcy's screen. His eyes changed, not with surprise, with sorrow. "Override approved by Daniel Mercer," he read. "Reason entered. Courtesy recovery for high-value guest." The words fell into the aisle like something heavy hitting water. A few passengers lowered their phones. The woman in pearls turned her face toward the window. The man in the sport coat stopped pretending impatience was virtue. Daniel swallowed. "That classification is standard revenue language. It doesn't imply misconduct." Eleanor turned to him. "Then why was the child's name hidden from the visible manifest?" Daniel blinked once. "I was protecting operational flow." "No," Eleanor said quietly. "You were protecting yourself." No one spoke. The hum of the cabin air became sharp and lonely. A paper cup rolled slightly under a first-class seat, tapped against a shoe, and stopped. Ethan stood in the aisle near row 31 with Lily tucked against his side, one hand resting on her shoulder. He did not smile. He did not look victorious. He looked like a father trying to make sure his daughter understood that truth did not need cruelty to be strong. Lily stared at the boarding pass in Eleanor's hand as if it were no longer a ticket, but a small door back to herself. "Daddy," she whispered, "is that my seat again?" Ethan bent just enough for her to hear. "It was always your name, sweetheart." Eleanor closed her eyes at that. When she opened them, she faced the cabin. "My name is Eleanor Whitmore," she said. 43 years ago, I founded this airline with one rule written on the first page of our service manual. Never let a passenger's worth be measured by how much they can be charged after they are already in our care." The silence changed shape. It was no longer confusion. It was recognition arriving too late. Captain Hayes straightened, and for the first time, several crew members looked at Eleanor as if an old photograph had stepped out of the wall. "Founder Whitmore," he said, his voice lower now, filled with respect that did not need performance. Daniel's pen slipped from his fingers and struck the floor with a small, bright click. No one bent to pick it up. Eleanor turned toward Lily and walked slowly down the aisle, each tap of her cane sounding like a gavel made of wood. She stopped in front of the little girl and held out the boarding pass with both hands. "This was given to me by kindness," she said. "It must be returned by justice." Lily took it carefully. Her small thumb brushed over her own printed name, Lily Brooks, seat 4A, and she let out the breath she had been holding for nearly an hour. Captain Hayes looked at Daniel. "Mr. Mercer, you are relieved of operational authority for this flight pending investigation. The incident will be filed with corporate compliance before we push back. The passenger manifest will be corrected, the seat restored, and no door closes until that is done." Daniel's face drained of color, but he did not shout. He only looked toward the screen, then toward the watching cabin, and finally toward the floor where his pen lay abandoned. Every excuse he had used still sounded polite, but now politeness had nothing left to hide behind. Ethan guided Lily forward, not quickly, not proudly, but steadily. When they reached Eleanor, he nodded once. "Thank you for making them look at the paper," he said. Eleanor's eyes softened. "No, Mr. Brooks. Thank you for teaching your daughter that people matter before seats do." The cabin stayed silent. Not embarrassed silence. Not empty silence. The kind of silence that comes when a room understands it has just witnessed a small mercy become evidence, and evidence become justice. Ethan looked at Lily holding her boarding pass, then at the open aircraft door, and for the first time that day, power had moved toward him without being asked. The question was what a man like Ethan Brooks would do with it now. The correction began before anyone sat down. Marcy reprinted the manifest with Lily Brooks restored to 4A. Then Captain Hayes signed the incident report at the galley counter, while the jet bridge door stayed open, and the cabin waited in a silence that no longer felt impatient. Daniel Mercer was escorted off the aircraft by an airport operations supervisor. Not dragged, not shouted at, not humiliated for entertainment, just removed from authority by the same system he had tried to bend. Ethan watched only long enough to understand that the wrong had been stopped, then turned Lily gently away so the last image she carried would not be a man being broken, but a wrong being corrected. "We don't stare when people fall," he told her softly. "Even when they caused the fall?" she whispered. Ethan looked down at the boarding pass in her hands, its corners bent, the red scanner light now printing clean across the barcode. "Especially then," he said. "That's how we remember who we are." Eleanor heard him from the first row. She had spent most of her life in rooms where men spoke loudly about values after quietly trading them away. Yet this delivery driver in a worn navy jacket had defended a stranger, protected a child, preserved a woman's privacy, and refused to turn justice into revenge. That was not poverty. That was character. When Lily finally slid into seat 4A, she did not press her face to the window right away. She set the boarding pass on her lap and smoothed it with both palms, as if it were something alive that had survived being mishandled. Ethan buckled her belt, checked it twice, then stepped back toward row 31. "Mr. Brooks," Captain Hayes called. Ethan paused. "Your seat is here with your daughter." Ethan looked at Eleanor, unsure. She gave that seat away. Eleanor shook her head, and the small brass tag on her bag caught the cabin light. "No," she said. "She offered kindness. We are returning what was taken." The words settled gently, and this time, no one challenged them. No one muttered about upgrades. No one looked at Ethan's scuffed boots as proof of anything except Miles walked honestly. After the flight landed, there were no cameras waiting for him, no oversized check, no sudden fairy tale pretending one decent act should erase years of rent, grief, and tired mornings. What came instead arrived quietly over the next few weeks. An internal compliance review, a rewritten seat override policy requiring dual approval, mandatory service training built around dignity instead of revenue categories, and a letter on heavy cream paper addressed not to a lucky passenger, but to Mr. Ethan Brooks and Miss Lily Brooks. Eleanor invited them to the airline's anniversary gathering as honored guests, with one condition Ethan asked for himself. Lily's name would not be used in public without her permission. Eleanor agreed before he finished asking. At the ceremony, she did not make Ethan stand under bright lights or turn his tired life into a performance. She simply told a room of executives and crew members that an airline's soul could be measured by how it treated people who had nothing to offer except trust. Then she placed Lily's boarding pass in a small glass frame and handed it back to her. "This was never just a seat," Eleanor said. "It was a lesson we almost failed." Lily held the frame against her chest. Ethan's eyes lowered, not from shame now, but from the humility of being seen without being used. On Monday morning, he wore the same faded navy delivery jacket, started the same van, and packed Lily's lunch before dawn. The framed boarding pass sat on their kitchen shelf beside a chipped mug and a photograph of Rachel. No longer a fragile paper reminder of what was taken, but a quiet proof that kindness could travel farther than the person who gave it. Lily came to the door in her pajamas, rubbing one eye. "Daddy," she asked, "does kindness always win?" Ethan looked at the early light spreading across the windshield, soft and gold, touching the worn steering wheel, the lunch bag, the old jacket sleeve, and the little girl who had given up a window seat without knowing the sky would one day give it back. "Not always first," he said, "but when it's real, sweetheart, it waits long enough to become justice."